Thank you for joining us for another edition of Career Interviews with Corporate College. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined today by Lauren Rudman. She's the Director of HR for Donley's Construction. She's a former Cleveland SHRM board president and currently serves on a number of boards, including Engage Cleveland. Thank you for being here, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here today.
I have a feeling we're going to have a great conversation and we're going to learn a lot. So if you could first just tell me a little bit about your career path and the field you're in. You're in HR. How did you get there? What led you down this path?
Sure. So we're dating now. We're going back some years. So dating back, but in high school, I had to go shadow as part of our senior year experience very early on in like August or September. And I went to my mother's workplace, and she worked in HR. Now, obviously, you can't shadow your parents, so I shadowed one of her colleagues. And I had the chance to watch somebody be hired on the same day,
Oh, wow.
as well as, unfortunately, be terminated the same day.
Oh, my goodness.
And I remember thinking that was really cool. And so, that really took off my career in HR. And we had to spend 2 weeks shadowing, so I got to learn more about benefits and recruiting and how to get individuals to join the organization. So when it was time to start looking at schools and really, taking that part seriously, I looked for schools that had human resources as a major. And so I attended Miami University. So my bachelor's is in business administration. My focus is in HR. And I actually have a retail marketing minor as part of my background. And so after going to school, I moved back to Cleveland, where I'm originally from. And then I started with the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, and I was there for 6 years. And I had the opportunity to participate in a management development program for 2 years while I was there. And then once that program was done, I was in human resources for the next 4 years in various capacities, probably more so focused on recruitment and the talent management side. After RTA, then I moved to a company called Aeroco International, which is a manufacturing firm. And I was an HR manager on the plant operations side for about 3 years. And then once after that 3 years, a company called Pentair acquired Aeroco. So I went along with that acquisition and remained in HR, but I shifted my client group to support our commercial side of the business. So sales, marketing, customer care, supply chain, engineering, product development, so everything outward facing to customers. And then in March of 2018, I decided to join Donley's Construction, where I am today as their HR director. So we're an organization of about 580 employees within 6 states, and currently been dealing with everything from talent acquisition to COVID-19 and everything in the middle there.
I love the diversity of your experience. So, just because you're at one organization doesn't mean you can't transfer those skills to another organization that looks a lot different, right?
100%. And for me, it was easy. I was lucky to go to organizations where they were different industries, but people are people regardless of where you go. And you'll find that we actually have a lot more similarities than we do differences. So that definitely made it easy for me.
That's good wisdom there, right? So, if you could share with me, you mentioned going to school and getting your degrees, but were there any certifications as well that helped you along the way that you would recommend for someone in HR looking to get into HR?
Absolutely. So the Society for Human Resource Management, as well as a group called the Human Resources Certification Institute, have certifications. So I was able to invested money into getting both of those certifications. I did have the PHR, or what's called the Professional and Human Resources Certification. I got that back in 2008, I believe. And then as my career progressed, I was able to sit also for the Senior Professional in Human Resources, or SPHR certification as well. So I maintain those both. I maintain my SPHR certification every 3 years, where you have to get so many credits within that 3-year time frame to maintain your certification. So that's also a great way to keep up to date with what's going on in our industry. And also too, I think it helps from an employer side as well as an employee side, develop that foundational knowledge of HR, because you might be somebody who, for example, is a specialist. So you might be a recruiter, or maybe you're in training. Having this certification gives you a broad understanding of all the areas of HR. So maybe one day you'll want to become a generalist or a business partner where you're focusing on a little bit of everything instead of specializing in an area. So those certifications have certainly been helpful, and I love continuous learning. So that also makes it easy for me to keep up those credits.
That's awesome. And then, as you're looking at those sort of things to keep those skills sharp, what do you seek out? And, what about getting involved in organizations as well to help you with that HR piece?
Networking is your lifeline, especially in HR. I think with the ever-changing landscape of our function, and especially now with everything going on, from a pandemic to diversity and inclusion and equality, you need to rely on your network. So for me, what has been huge was getting in after college. I got involved within the Cleveland Society for Human Resource Management as a member, and we are an affiliate of National SHRM, or the national organization. So for me, getting involved locally in Cleveland, I was able to develop relationships with people. I had volunteered to serve on the board, and so that was a great way for me to continue to remain involved in the organization and really progress all the way up to the president seat. So I served on the board for about a total of 8 years, and now I'm in what's called past president mode. So I say I'm retired, but I still contribute to the chapter by serving on our foundation board, as well as leading an annual event called Disrupt HR CLE. So
That's really
I'd say
cool.
thank you. So I'd say for anybody who's in HR, developing that network, whether that's getting involved through a local chapter, whether that's engaging heavily on LinkedIn, either in community groups or HR groups, or just even developing those connections with individuals within your industry or within your function, it will help you more than you know.
That's fantastic. It's so important not to like work in isolation, right? And we don't always get that at our own organizations because there's not always like that perfect counterpart for us sometimes. So keeping networking, keeping engaged, serving in different capacities, that's so incredible. So, with that, when you kind of look at, your organization or organizations you've worked at in the past, this year itself has been crazy, right? Like so many different things that, have been thrown at us in 2020.
Yep.
So as you look ahead to keep your team engaged or, are planning for the year, what kind of things are you thinking of goal setting or anything like that for yourself?
It's a great question. So I think anybody in human resources, or frankly anybody in business, and including in our entire world, right, had to shift in March with COVID-19. So I know for me personally, and the HR team at Donley's, we're a small but mighty team. There's 2 of us within the HR department. So for us, it's really zeroing in on what can we focus on for the remainder of the year, and understanding that we've had to pivot. There were a lot of initiatives and programs that we wanted to put in place for the year, but when COVID, especially hit more of the Cleveland, Ohio area in beginning to mid-March, that really had to change. So myself and my team, it was quickly understanding what we could about COVID and understanding that it changes on a daily basis. I'm very lucky to have a fantastic safety officer, as well as our general counsel within Donley's, who the 3 of us really partnered and have been the dynamic trio, as we call ourselves, over the past couple months. And I think also too, the importance of bringing all those functions together with a pandemic is crucial. And obviously my controller is a big part of that as well, because we're closely managing budgets. Unfortunately, we did have to conduct a couple furloughs and a couple layoffs, not too many, as I know, compared to some of my other peers within their organizations. So we've been lucky, but that could also quickly change within the rest of 2020. I work in construction, predominantly commercially. So life can look a lot different once this summer hits and beyond. I think it's also important. So I think the importance of pivoting is huge with this. I also think it also gives an opportunity for HR professionals to get creative with what offerings look like. For me, for example, in construction, our office never closed. So yes, we afforded the opportunity to people to work from home, should their jobs allow them to, but our projects remained open. So our superintendents, our project managers, they were all on site on projects. So how can we take what we wanted to do from an HR standpoint for the year? How can we turn it virtual? Or how can we expand upon a program or initiative that we were already planning? So I think you have to look for the silver linings. And for HR professionals within the last few months, it's been that time, and you have to find that silver lining. And a lot of individuals look to HR to be that champion of the company's culture and mission. And so even when sometimes you're frustrated or things aren't going our way, it's important to remain positive and assume positive intent of people. This is an ever-changing climate that we're in. And so I think patience and listening to understand are really crucial for now. So, and obviously will continue to be important. So I think it's all the importance of pivoting with your goal setting, being creative, being that business partner to your other, to other departments within the organization, and have some fun with it and find that silver lining.
Wow. So many great goals though, when you talk about like it's pivoting, right? Like you're taking where you were and now there's this new situation. You're just turning it into something else. And like you said, silver lining it. It can be an okay thing. You just have to get through it.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
so with that, you have, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot in a day to do. Especially you mentioned there's only one other person that you're working with a lot of times for your HR department. So, how do you find time for your volunteering and why is it important to you to do that?
Yeah. So growing up, part of, going, even dating back to grade school and high school, the schools I attended did require service hours as part of your academic curriculum. So it was always finding great ways to give back to the community, even at a young age. And so I think that's just carried with me, even in college. In college, I was a member of Miami Sherm. I was in a sorority. I played club softball for a couple years
Wow.
and mentored freshmen, when I was a senior. And so I think just growing up and having all that foundation, I wanted to continue that. After I graduated from Miami and moved back to Cleveland, I attended Cleveland State University for my master's. So for the first like 2 years after graduating, I didn't have a lot of time to volunteer. It was Cleveland Sherm and that was it. But I spent a lot of times on lunch hours or after work or at night putting in the work. Obviously, when you have an 8 to 5, time is of the essence. So you can't always get to your volunteer activities. But I think it comes down to time management, and it's all about finding what you're passionate about and in finding organizations like that. There's so many nonprofits within the Cleveland area for individuals to get involved in. And the beauty of volunteering too is that you contribute what you can contribute. And so, that can be anything from getting involved in a professional organization such as, Cleveland Sherm. That could be joining or volunteering in an animal shelter and walking dogs once a week. It could be mentoring a high school or college student through a group like College Now. It could be getting involved in Engage Cleveland, or a group that's focused on attraction and retention of individuals within our city. So I think it all comes down to finding what you're passionate about, finding that one cause. I guarantee you can find one in Cleveland, and just making that introduction to the organization and finding out what they're about and managing your time appropriately. I think especially for young professionals within Cleveland, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to sit on some associate boards or junior boards earlier on in my career. So that helped also pave the way for me to understand time management, what it means to serve on a board, time, talent, treasure, all of those things. So right now, I sit on 3 boards here in town, Engage Cleveland. I'm also on Cleveland State's Alumni Association board, and I also serve as now the fundraising chair of a group called Seroptimist International of Cleveland. So I'm really excited to continue involvement with those groups. All of them have wonderful missions, and I think are critical to the well-being of Cleveland. And it's also been great to see how they've had to pivot throughout COVID. And unfortunately, within a lot of the nonprofit world, a lot of fundraising events or board meetings or gatherings or programs that some of these groups offer have either had to move virtually or be rescheduled. And so it's also been great to assist those organizations how I can in pivoting as well.
That's great. I really loved how you spoke about the volunteering, how, you're giving what you can. It's not necessarily that you're automatically like signed up for 40 hours a week when you're already
Right.
working 50 to 60 at a job. But also that you get something back from it, right? You get networking, you get skill building, you might get a chance to do something you've never done before. And it really helps, you develop skills for leadership and teamwork later on too.
And you hit on the skill set perfectly. So what's funny is for Sir Optimist, I'm the fundraising chair,
Oh, wow.
and I've also, I mean, that's never really been part of my job to raise funds. So I'm excited to take on that responsibility. And in previous boards, I would sign up to serve on finance committees just because numbers hasn't always been my strong suit. So developing that skill set from a nonprofit organization and then being able to transfer that back to work and feeling comfortable when I see things like income statements and balance sheets and G&A expense reports, things like that. So that's also another piece. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's another piece that is helpful for people, those transferable skills, and making sure that you showcase that either on your resume, on LinkedIn, because that's also how you build connections. People find commonalities with other people, whether that's through a nonprofit or where you went to school or where you grew up or anything like that. So I think it's important to showcase those and like you said, find your passion and you can intermingle those skills between your personal and professional life.
That's awesome. And like me personally, so often earlier in my life or earlier in my career, I probably would have skimmed over like, oh, that's just volunteer work I do, and kind of separating that from my professional life, where
Yep.
really they can, merge together and kind of make this. I mean, they're part of who you are, right? There you have all these aspects that make Lauren Lauren or Ashley Ashley. So that's, kind of what we bring to the table. With that, it gets me thinking about earlier in my career, I wish I would have had that type of mindset. So, what type of advice would you have given yourself in your early career?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for me it was just about showing up to work every day, and it sounds very generic, but showing up every day, working hard, learning as much as I can, not being afraid to ask questions, and not being afraid to insert yourself in situations where you can learn.
Mm.
I was a 22-year-old female. When this is when I was at RTA, I was a 22-year-old female walking into a bus garage or a rail garage and interacting with individuals, oftentimes male, who were could be twice my age, and it's intimidating. And so I think you have to have the confidence, and you're there for a reason, and you're gonna you're gonna make hiccups along the way, accept them, learn from them, and you move on. So it's a lot of self-talk and a lot of confidence building. And I think also too the importance, going back to the network, I would say build that network early on. And the piece that a mentor once told me was that it's all about what you give, not necessarily what you receive. And even for me as a young professional back then, it was, how can I help other people? And in turn, individuals will help me. And so it's all about, what you give back is what you receive. So I think that's also the importance of networking, and you learn along the way and meet some pretty great people who become friends.
That's great. But it's just so perfect, I think, to be able to reassure yourself too that like those things that, are part of the day to day really are important. As you get older, you realize the benefit of them.
You sure do. So, and especially in Cleveland, I think you hear the Kevin Bacon quote, but it's really, in my opinion, 2 degrees of separation in Cleveland. I think and that's one of the benefits of our city, being more of smaller Midwest city. you're able to get connected to people pretty easily. So don't be afraid also too to make those asks, for a connection, either from a job perspective or maybe for a volunteer opportunity.
So true. So true. So looking ahead, do you have any professional or personal goals that you'd want to share as you're looking ahead for your career?
Yeah. So professionally, one of my goals has always been to be a chief HR officer for an organization. So that's still on my dream list. Um, I would love personally. Well, right now we're going through some home renovation projects, and I'm looking to get those done over the summer so
Oh,
I can.
good. Me too.
There you go. So those are some personal goals to to conquer this summer. Um, I think COVID also forced to me to try to move my body daily for at least 30 minutes and drink a lot more water than I ever was. So even taking my health a little bit more seriously has and being home all day. Sometime on some days that I would be at home and not in the office, avoiding the kitchen only during appropriate time.
It's a little tough. That walk in and open the refrigerator even though you're not hungry
Right,
situation happens.
exactly. So those have been some great motivating goals for me, just to kind of getting back to basics, right, with eating right and working out and moving your body. So that's on my to-do list.
Yay. Well, thanks so much for sharing and for being here today to talk to us about HR and your career path. I think it's just been a great conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate your time, and anything job related, I'm happy to help out with.
All right, wonderful. And thank you for listeners tuning in today. If you have any questions about the HR certifications at Corporate College, I'll have a link in the description. Thank you so much and have a great day.